Hello everybody, good evening. We will be starting our discussion roundtable, and the idea of this kind of event is to have a different format of communication, because the lectures have this way of giving the information by the teacher, and a discussion table would be the possibility to bring the questions up and have different opinions at the same time from different teachers. We will do it this way. First, we will do I will put a few questions to the teachers to start with. Then, if the teachers, when they will express their meaning, their opinions, they will be able to ask each other the questions if they have for each other. And at the end, we will have questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, you'll be able to give it to them, ask them. Yeah? And the meaning, the topic, the theme of this roundtable is the Prana, of course, and we put it as a definition of Prana. And you probably saw the introduction text, but you may also have had such thoughts about the definition of prana, because there are so many ways to approach this concept. In the Vedic text, we can see that prana is an exhale. In later texts, we can see it as an inhale. It can be vital force. It can be, and it changes as this concept enters Europe and has relations to esoteric traditions here in Western Europe, Mesmerism and New Age movement and so on. So we have such a nice company here. We have Swami Maitreyi, Siddhartha Krishna, Francois Loren, and me, Dmitry Danilov, who will be moderating this, and this roundtable. The first question that I will ask is actually, I want us to start from the definition, maybe in a short way, because I know that Swami and Siddhartha gave 4 days of lectures on the topic, so they can go on and on about it. But when we are in this very broad understanding of different different Indian texts, Vedic, Yoga-sutras, Vedanta, Tantra, and so on, what would you say is a short definition? And I would say a practical definition of prana, because I also wanted us to talk practical. So what is prana?
Are you asking me to start?
Yes.
So in these 3 days, we have done a very, very short version, and now we will do it even shorter. So actually, if we are putting it in a very, very short, from both the traditions of Vedanta, Samkhya, and Tantra, prana is livingness. From all these traditions is the concept that there is the nothingness, non-existence, and there is thisness, the existence. And in the nothingness is whatever we call it, God or Brahman or Shiva, whatever is the name, is only the omniscience, omnipresent, and all-pervading, all-knowing, all-powerful, right? And within that lies also the sleeping or the potential. The potential is there for existence. So like the seed, the potential, it is tiny little seed for a big tree is there, but it has not happened yet. And within this all-encompassing, or this potential, lies three powers, which is the three power, the Shaktis. There is the desire to become. There has to be a desire to become. And creative, or the becoming, the action to actually create something. And then there is the knowing power. So from this nothingness comes into existence, and this potential starts with vibration. In all the tradition, it starts vibration. Even in today's modern science, has the same theory. I don't know if you know about the string theory. Anybody heard about the string theory? Very nice. So actually, with all the theories, Newton's theories, Einstein's theory, quantum, whatever these sciences, now they started the scientists, to find a theory which would combine and explain all of them. And they came out with this string theory, the theory of vibration. Exactly like a string, if you have a string and it's a string, and before you pluck it, it's nothing. There's no sound, there's no vibration, there's nothing. You pluck it and you get a vibration and you get a sound. So the point of existence, creation, begins with this vibration. And this first vibration, that is energy, and that is the beginning of prana, of livingness.
Okay.
Comes to sound.
Thank you.
Om.
Thank you very much. That is very interesting, and I will give the word, maybe we have a discussion after, but we go on. Siddhartha, what would you say on this, the definition of prana?
The very grammatical meaning of the word itself. As I explained day before yesterday, the verbal Sanskrit root ana, which is there in each name of the five pranas, pra-ana, apa-ana, ud-ana, vi-ana, sam-ana. The meaning of that root is purposeful effort. So, when we look in ourselves, we have these 14 tools functioning in ourselves. The 5 senses of perception, the 5 senses of action, the mind, the intellect, the ego, and the memory. And we see purposeful action happening in each one of them. There is activity with a purpose. And the essence, the entity, which lies at the root of this purposeful activity happening in all these 14 instruments, that is what the word ana stands for. And each word for prana has this meaning at its center. So to put it in a nutshell, in very simple terms, that is the grammatical meaning, which I think has been acknowledged by the Sanskrit authors from the very beginning, since the word has been used.
Thank you, Siddhartha. I still have a question on the prefix, the pra. But maybe we come back to that. So if we have ana...
Pra means intense.
Okay.
Intense.
Thank you. François?
Thank you. In a nutshell, in a limited sense, for me, prana is life. And in a more broad perspective, it is the spark of creativity that at each moment of time, which is a mind construction, is creating and destroying this world.
Thank you. Short answer. Okay. And, well, we see that even now at the round table we have a little shift in the meanings here, in the description. And I have, to understand prana, we need to ask also other practical questions. Maybe, forgive me for the questions down to earth, but I really wanted to get it for us to understand, the practical part of it. So I've heard, and I was at your lectures, and I've heard different opinions also on the location of prana. Where is it located? Where does it touch the body? When because there are also different opinions. Prana is something inside. Prana is outside, and we operate it somehow. From your opinion, from your definitions, like Siddhartha said, it's an intention that's coming from within. From the definition of, correct me please if I understood it maybe in my way also. In Swami Maitreyi, it's more a universal concept. So, in coming from your definitions, what would you say is either the location of prana, where is it located, or if it's coming from within, for example, or if it's a spark, as Francois said, or if it's coming from the outside, if it's an universal concept, how does it enter the body? Where does it touch the body to go in? Please, Svana.
Well, it is both universal and within everything in creation. So according to the different concepts and philosophies and traditions, everything in creation is composed of both awareness, consciousness, and energy, prana. So it is within, and it is without, it is everything. And as Siddhartha said, it is governing all the different functions of our body, the body and the mind, but it's also all around us, and we receive prana from the food that we eat, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, in our interactions, from the trees, from the earth, from the environment. It is said, prana is said to be a multi-dimensional energy. And of course it is the source, but it's also within everything. And we can divide energy in different types of energies, whether it's electromagnetic, electrical, thermal, whatever energy that we are, but that is also prana. Behind the thoughts of prana, as Siddhartha said, behind our emotions are also energy. So we can't say that it is inside or outside, because it is everywhere.
Thank you. Siddhartha, please.
Yes. So, as we saw in the meditation sessions of, for example, today, we meditated on and tried to feel the 5 forms of prana which are present within the body. Prana in the yogic texts is primarily referred to as being present in this region. Apana, below the navel. Samana, between prana and apana, primarily, just primarily. And udana is the upward movement, so it's up to here. And vyana permeates the entire body. So that is the general picture of the 5 pranas within the body that emerges when we look at the different ancient commentaries. And then there are the universal forms of 5 prana, which we discussed today, the same potential active out there. And then there is even a psychological form of 5 pranas that 7th, 8th century texts such as Yukti Dipika on Sankhya discusses, which I started discussing today but could not end, so I will end it hopefully, and I have to tomorrow. But yeah, this is very interesting, just to, since you talked about the location, at least for the sake of visualizations, for the sake of meditations, these are the primary locations where we can feel the activities of these energies the most potently. So otherwise, prana as a life force is all-pervading, it's all around us. This blue planet Earth is literally shimmering with the principle of prana. Not only we as living beings living on it, but I think the planet itself, when we speak, for example, we say things like the Amazon rainforests are the lungs of Mother Earth. Then we consider Mother Earth a breathing entity, and so she herself is filled with prana. And ultimately the source of all this energy is the sun. Antascharati rojana dasya prana dapanati. It's a beautiful mantra from the Ṛgveda, where the seer is addressing the sun and is saying that, "O sun, it is your radiance, your light, which is flowing in me as inhalation and exhalation. It is your light, it is your power, it is your..." So the source is up there. And so I would say that the sun is radiating prana into the entire solar system, and beyond that into the entire universe. And like this, each and every star in this universe is radiating out an immense amount of energy, which is the primary source of prana. And in this way, what appears to be a dark universe is in fact a universe which is filled with a tremendous amount of force and energy. And that, I think, is prana in its universal form. So yes, within us there are particular locations, but ultimately it's everywhere.
And just to follow up, if the sun is the source of prana, and we already have prana inside in the form of apana, udana, and so on, how is it so that although we already have it inside, so are we having all these 5 pranas from the sun, also from within?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We are constantly receiving it. In fact, every morsel that we consume, the food that we consume, contains those very energy packets which the plant has received from the sun. And that is the source of every movement that is there in our body, in our speech, in our mind. So the ultimate source is the one that is rising every morning, and we mostly even don't care to look up.
Okay. Thank you, Siddhartha.
Thank you.
Sorry. It reminds me of this story of 2 fishes in the ocean, and one of them asked the other, "I've heard about something which is the ocean, but I wonder how I can find it." So I wonder where prana is not. It's only, even the person who is very intellectual and using a lot of thinking is the expression of prana. But due to the way he functions, he doesn't feel it because he's too busy with his own thoughts. So I think the practical question, I don't know what you mean by practical, actually. Is there something in life that is not practical? Everything is practical in a way. So for me, the question is how to become more sensitive, because our education, the history of mankind, has transformed us in robots more than in sensitive human beings. And the more sensitive one is, the easier it is to feel that everything is alive. Even the constructions of the human mind, like this hall and so on, they are vibrating with energy. It's not only the sun, it's everywhere. So for me, there is no question about prana. You don't have to bother about where it comes from and where it goes. You just have to feel it, to sense it.
Thank you, Francois. I will answer your question about the practical part. Sometimes when we talk about prana, maybe other things, we can use so many metaphors that you don't know how to deal with it. And when we talk about, there is a term, pranayama, so there are, and which concerns lots of practices that operate with prana. That is something that you do, and you have to know the practice which you receive from the teacher, or you get it to know it by yourself, or maybe from, Sahasrara, or in any other way. So when I'm saying practical, I'm saying something tangible and something we can actually use as a praxis. Okay, and the next question. We talked about the source of prana, and in text it's not clear, depending on the text, what is more primary concerning prana. Is it the mind? Because in Sakyakarika it is said that the mind, the manas, buddhi, and ahamkara is what the prana is based on. But at the same time, in Upanishads we see that the breath is the primary, something more primary than the manas, buddhi, ahamkara. So what is your opinion on this? What is more primary?
There is no more primary. There are the different pranas, exactly as Siddhartha was mentioning, but it's also the solar power, the sun. But we also have the reflective light from the moon, which is the mental pranas. So in the same way as we have the 5 vital pranas in the body, we also have the pranas in the mind, the mental pranas, which are, as you mentioned, the mana with the thought, pranas behind the thought, pranas behind the intellect, the reasoning, pranas, memories of prana, the prana of I, the existence. And in the text is mentioned that prana divides itself into 3 forces or shaktis. The prana shakti, which is the vital force. The chitta shakti, which is the mental force. And atma shakti, which is the spiritual force. And we can see in these 3 forces that the atma shakti, or the I, I am a separate entity. And the vital force, I am living, livingness. And the third is, I know, I am aware, I know that I am living. So there are just but there's no primary, they're all as important.
Thank you.
Yeah. There is a very interesting passage in Ṛgveda Upaniṣads where the teacher states that Prāṇa is the family name of all the inner instruments, which means the 5 senses of perception, the 5 senses of action, and the intellect, memory, ego, and the mind. Like, we have family names, the Clintons, the Obamas. So whenever...
The Democrats.
Yeah, the surnames by which you refer to a whole family and then everybody who has that surname. So Prāṇa is literally in the Upanishadic literature, it is used as a surname, as a collective noun for all the instruments that are present in the subtle body. And the reason, the idea is that when this last breath of life leaves the body, then all these instruments, they merge into it and leave with it as well. So all these are manifestations of that single prana. So I think, at least as you mentioned in the beginning, from an Upanishadic perspective, all of these enter the human body the moment the egg and the sperm unites, in that union of the mother and the father. The moment they unite and a new life form, that first cell which is created, immediately prana is present there. And that's why division and increasing happened. One of the things that I remember my master, Swami Ramananji, referring to again and again, the best sign of prana is when something multiplies and expands. So the moment that cell starts multiplying itself and transforms into this. So it's not something that we have the human body and then the prana enters from outside, but it's from the very first moment. It is the moment this union happens, and that's the key point. That's the key point. The union between the universal Father, consciousness, and the universal Mother, Shakti, power, energy. When these two come together, interact, then what is produced, that is the principle of prana. And within that, all the other, the mind, the intellect, all of these they exist like potentials, like a tree exists in a seed. And then as the seed starts growing, slowly and slowly these potentials, they start manifesting themselves. So that is the picture that we find in the Upanishads. The reason that Sankhya gives universal intellect the primary position is from a very different perspective. The idea there is that to create the universe, an understanding is required, and that's why it starts speaking about Mahat, about the universal intelligence. But I would argue that even if it's not mentioned, the principle of prana exists as a potential already in Shakti, the very source, or Prakriti, the very source, Mother Nature of that universal intellect, because you cannot have an intellect, an understanding, without the fundamental principle of prana. That would be my first thought, but these are extremely deep questions, and we would have to think more about it.
Can you remind me the question?
Maybe we can stop. That's us next time.
What is more primary? What is more primary? The mind, ahamkara, and manas, like Sankhyakarika says, or is it the breath, or in the prana, depending on how we understand the prana?
So you want a practical answer?
I want your answer on this question.
I think I would like to use a comparison. on the limited sense of an individual so-called person, I consider prana as gasoline. So you have to do a journey with a certain amount of gasoline. You cannot change that amount. It is at birth. And you can not improve it. You can just spare it, not use it indiscriminately. But the gasoline will lead you nowhere unless there is a good driver and the driver knows where he wants to go and how to go. So for me, the most important aspect is not prana, it's buddhi. It's the faculty that leads us to awakening, to the ultimate reality.
Thank you, Francois. So this is very interesting. Okay, I have another question, which came out of what has been said. I would say it like this. I would put it like this: if prana is everywhere, and it infills everyone, why do we need all these practices of yoga, which we were doing for a week? And you know, some of them are very difficult. Some of them you have to wake up in the morning and go outside to get this prana. So there must be some kind of secret about these practices. How would you describe it? I mean, but these practices exist, so they have to be there. We have to do something with prana. The fact that it's just there is not enough, obviously, but maybe there is another opinion on this.
But maybe we can start with
You want me to start?
Yes.
Okay.
So you remember the question.
Let's just give a kind of story. I left my home for 12 years. I come back. I open the door of my room. My God, so much dust. Dust that had started before I was born. Dust that started before my parents were born. Dust that started before the country where I happened to be born existed even. Dust that has started probably even before humanity started on this planet. So we need some way to clean the dust, and I think all the techniques of yoga are therefore helping to make a little clean space within, so that the most important aspect that is within us, which is this faculty of seeing things as they are and freeing ourselves from our beliefs and stupid ideas that have grown in humanity since the beginning of time, can be removed.
Thank you, Francois.
Yeah, very beautiful. Like Francois. Like Mr. Francois already.
You can say Francois.
Francois, thank you. In the yogic practices, working on the intellect, evolving it, making it capable to understand the deepest mysteries of the universe is the central focus point. But, and I cannot speak for all the practices because so many different traditions have been presented, and I have not practiced all of those practices myself. But the practices that I know, the practices that I practice myself, seem to have a very simple purpose, and I can explain it with the help of the rays of the sun. The rays of the sun are everywhere, but to kindle fire, they need to be focused, and the lens does the work. The moment you take a lens, focus the rays of the sun, it focuses on one point, and as children we used to do this play, just burn away our books of pierce holes into the book. So the energy is present, but is it focused? So one aspect is the removal of tamas and rajas, like he mentioned, the reduction of darkness, and rajas means in fact dust. So the dust which settles over the mind, over the intellect, over the heart, to clean that. And then to give it a focus, because that's when the strength, the actual strength of our being manifests itself. So the purpose of these practices, in my understanding, is to clean, focus, and the third thing that I would add is to still. So clean, focus, and still. What? The intellect, the faculty of understanding. So that the truth, which is present everywhere, but due to its subtlety and stillness, is mostly never noticed, always neglected. Such an intellect becomes capable of experiencing what suddenly is realized to be absolutely obvious, but was never noticed.
But just to follow up, so the practices concerning prana
Yes.
are intended to force the intellect or the vitality, or is it?
In my understanding, since the goal of all yogic practices is to evolve the human intellect, the purpose of all these practices is to make it capable of that. That is at least in the tradition that I follow. I cannot speak for all the traditions, but that's my understanding.
Thank you. Thanks. Swami.
Yes, so prana is everywhere, as you say, but of course it can be less or more. And the purpose of all the practices is to increase the prana and to connect to the high vibrations of prana. And this happens on all levels. And the most important, the first thing that we do is actually to become aware of the pranic force behind, or on a physical level, on our all the functions of the body. On a mental level, what are the thoughts? On an emotional level, what are our emotions? So of course the ultimate purpose, not the ultimate purpose, but the purpose of yoga in our life is to be healthy, to increase the well-being of our body and of our mind, and to connect with positivity and to be happy, and to connect with beauty of life. So more important, so these practices of yoga, increasing the prana on a physical level, we become more healthy. Increasing the prana on a mental level, we move from, prana is light. So look at our thoughts. When our thoughts also are negative, destructive, criticism, then it has a low prana. When we increase the prana, we are connecting to thoughts that are positive, uplifting, encouraging, all those positive thoughts. And on an emotional level, we are, instead of destructive emotions are energy. But when emotions are destructive, heavy, even explosive, Siddhartha said that when the prana is explosive, then when we are gathering the prana or redirecting this energy in the emotions, we can not suppress the emotion, but we are redirecting and increasing and connecting or experiencing positive emotions. like happiness, joy, and generosity instead of hate, love, compassion. And that is also all the flow of prana.
Thank you, Swami. Thank you very much for these answers. They really start the process of evaluating and thinking. And I have the last question before we go to the second part, and you can ask questions to each other. Very often there is a bridge between the concept of prana and immortality. It starts very early in Shatapatha Brahmana, and then in haṭha-yogic texts it's very often said, if you do this practice it will come. And like, for example, practices of sitting on a hill and doing these movements with nauli and things like this, that will bring you to a state of immortality. How do you understand this bridge? What is the immortality? What immortality do we attain doing the practices that concern prana? Maybe we'll start with you. That's all.
Again, me?
Yes. Or maybe we'll start with Siddhartha.
Now we'll start with Siddhartha.
Oh my God. Okay.
He's immortal.
Mortality and immortality, change and changelessness. There is something within each one of us which is constantly flowing like a river and changing constantly. The body is changing. We can easily notice that when we look at our pictures. The breath is constantly moving, flowing in and out. Our thoughts constantly change. We never have what the thoughts which we had 10 years ago, we may not have today. Our intellect is constantly changing. The decisions that we take in our lives, they are constantly evolving. Our ego, our sense of our own selves is constantly changing. Our memories are constantly being added to, and we forget things, so that's constantly changing. So all these layers of our being are constantly changing, and they have a starting point, and since they have a starting point, there is a point when they will cease to exist in their present form and take another new form. That's an inevitable reality. And as long as we identify ourselves with any one of these, if I look at my body and think that this is what I am, if I look at my breath, our mind, our intellect, our ego, our memories, our thoughts, and think that this is what I am, then I'm in the realm of mortality. I will conclude myself to be a mortal being. Absolutely fine. But then there is the space and light, or we can call it the luminous space, in which every changing thought arises, in which every thought about ourselves arises, in which every memory arises, in which every decision arises, and is being that inner luminous space which the masters speak of as consciousness, the light of consciousness, the infinite space-like presence of consciousness. Since that is not made up of parts, consciousness is not made up of discrete atoms or parts, because destruction in the understanding of Indian philosophical thinkers is just when the parts making up that entity disintegrate and separate from each other. That's when the thing ceases to exist. If you remove all the bricks that make up this building, then this building will cease to exist. Now we are faced with an entity in which you don't find the constituent bricks. Consciousness as that luminous inner space does not seem to be made up of discrete, small little bits which can separate from each other, and thus consciousness may cease to exist. So because of that, the more a person explores this mystery, we never fully understand it. Even the Upanishadic masters say that we don't, you cannot comprehend the one that is comprehending everything. But the moment we start at least thinking about it and experience it and feel and start to analyze it with a settled, focused, calm intellect, we realize that this must be something that cannot be. I wouldn't see how it can be destroyed, since it's not made up of parts. And since that is the innermost core, and the moment instead of identifying with these temporary layers of my being, when I start identifying myself with that and feel that this is ultimately what I am, then the sense of immortality is not something that is acquired, it is simply something that is recognized. Because this essence was immortal always and will always be immortal, but it is simply that we are not. So we, instead of becoming immortal, we actually just wake up to our immortality, and the practice of pranayama settles down the mind, focuses the mind, cleanses the mind, to be able to comprehend, observe, and experience this innermost essence. That is why it is understood that the practice of pranayama leads to immortality. That is how, in my humble understanding, I understand it, and I look forward to hearing.
Thank you very much. Sorry.
Well, I don't know what I can add to this. There is a beautiful story in the Bhagavad-gītā, a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. You know the story of Bhagavad-gītā? Yeah. So anyway, they are at the battlefield, and Krishna is the charioteer. Arjuna is the warrior. And now they are fighting, brothers, the cousins against each other. Families are going now to fight against each other. So Arjuna, he breaks down and says, I am not going to fight. How can I kill my cousins? How can I kill my friends? No, I am not going to fight. So I will leave this battlefield. Then, of course, Krishna, and from that point starts the whole teaching of Bhagavad-gītā. And in the, I don't remember the first or second chapter, comes the teaching. Krishna says, you are not going to kill anybody. Because it's only the bodies that dies. And the ātman, so it is the whole explanation and the whole discussion and the whole of the immortal self, ātman. And it is exactly as Siddhartha said, that if we are experiencing, as long as our awareness is on a physical level, we identify ourselves, I am this body. There was a French philosopher, Descartes. He said, I am because I'm thinking. I think, therefore I am.
I think.
But in the Indian thought, it is Shivoham, I am Shiva. Aham Brahmasi, I am Brahman, therefore I am consciousness. So that is just a shorter version of what Siddhartha said. But these yogis up in the Himalayas, using pranayamas to be immortal, of course there is a process then to disconnect both the awareness and the pranic connection from this body, from the senses, from the mind. And the ultimate yogic achievement is to consciously draw the prana with the awareness out of the body, to consciously leave the body, and then also to consciously be able to move in to a new body. You're just changing car or computer. So that is also the purpose of using the
So you build the
advanced
bridge between
practices.
the pranic practices, consciousness, and in the end, if you
Yes.
get to a state of consciousness, then immortality.
These forces, they always move together. Consciousness and prana, awareness and prana, they move together. And it's only dependent on where we have our awareness. In the physical body, the pranic body, the mental or the higher bodies, or in the spiritual awareness, but they are still together. Yes.
Thank you. As well.
The spark of creativity that at each moment creates the totality of that which exists will never end. But all the aspects of this creativity must die. So, knowingly or not, this body will die, this thinking process will die, this ego will die. Better the ego dies before the death of the body. There's a better chance to do what you just said about coming back or not coming back at all. But I think the publicity was invented with the Hatha-yoga Pradipika and such texts when they speak about immortality. If you do this and if you do that, and you will be free of disease. It's a way of helping people to come to yoga, because they know you start with the body, you start with the knowledge, you start with the idea of immortality, but sooner or later you have to understand that it is not possible, and that if you have to find something which is immortal, it is not in the body, it is not in the mind, and you start the real investigation. It's a kind of a hook.
Thank you, Francois. Would you like to ask each other questions, depending on what you were saying?
Maybe what is that? It would be nice to have some questions from the.
Yeah, but maybe do you have questions? To each other?
No, you have to understand that on the yogic path, the more yogic practices that you practice, the less questions you have.
Right,
we don't have any questions.
So superficial.
Yeah, but I think I will express my opinion on this. If we, sometimes in the yogic world, at least what I see, sometimes you go so much into understanding the world the way you see it, and you're so sure about it, then you don't want to communicate and ask other people and their opinions, because you, to my opinion, as good Siddhartha said, you cannot know everything, and even the Vedic, the authors of the Upanishads were standing on this position. So this is a good opportunity
I have
to...
a question. What is the importance of knowledge? What is the importance of knowledge? Has knowledge any importance? Do we need knowledge to realize what we are? Or is the realization something that comes out of the blues? Whether you know or you don't know anything about the Gita, the Upanishad and so on, whether it cannot happen just like that out of the blues, or do you need knowledge? What is the importance of knowledge? That is my question.
You want to start?
Is it to both?
Is it
to anyone who wants to answer?
I think the more important than knowledge is there's no use of knowledge if that knowledge is not applied, and that is wisdom. Then it very much depends, and as your question, if it can happen anyway, definitely. There are people that are more yogis that I have met, they have never practiced yoga in their life, they have no idea what yoga is. Then it depends on what personality types we are. And we have, up on these mountains, there are so many different trails, but they all go on to the top of the mountain or around. And we all have to choose our own path. And some people, it is through just living and acting and making experiences, making mistakes. For some people, it is through inquiring and knowledge and searching and wanting to understand, and what does this mean and what does that mean. And for other people, it is more through the heart, through different spiritual practices of mantras or any spiritual traditions, or just connecting through the heart to others and through nature, and through also helping others is also another path that leads to the same. So everybody has their own path.
Thank you. I'll just continue on that, but I just want to be a little bit clearer. What do we mean by knowledge? And do you include wisdom into knowledge, or do you see those things, those
separate.
two as separate?
Separate, it's not
then,
the same.
Then by knowledge, you basically mean more bookish knowledge?
Acquisition of
information from the teachers.
Understanding the information, trying to live by the information.
Yeah.
Yes, all this.
Okay. The tradition that I follow speaks about the three fundamental tools that I have as an individual human being to evolve. The first one is my hands, by which I work, I act. That is karma, action, which is seen as the very foundation of the practice. That's why in texts like the Bhagavad-gītā, the moment Krishna comes down to the basics in the 3rd chapter, first in the 2nd chapter he describes the heights of Sankhya realization, but then when he realizes that Arjuna is not grasping, it's going over his head, then he comes down to the very basics, and the first thing that he mentions is karma yoga, the yoga of action, where we engage our hands in activities that prepare us for deeper understanding. So that's the hands. And then the second important thing after that is to add love to our actions. Action which is not inspired by love can end up being selfish, egocentric. So the next step is to take our actions from selfishness, from being directed by selfishness into being directed by selflessness, by universal love, loving kindness, compassion, maitri, and karuna. And that's bhakti. By the way, I really don't like the translation devotion in English, because the way the masters of bhakti explain bhakti is just unconditional, supreme love. Parama prema, sattvasmin parama prema swarupa, parama prema, supreme love. So when that supreme love, when we add the heart element to our hand and allow the hands to be directed by the heart, that is the second necessary step. And then knowledge is important, I feel. Otherwise, we end up saving the fish from drowning. You get the point? You see a fish in water, and out of love, you say, I want to save this fish. Oh, poor fish, this is going to drown. Let me pull it out and save it. This happens. This is how sometimes cultures destroy other cultures. They want to uplift them. They want to make them better people. But in the process, they actually completely destroy those cultures. Love was there. Tremendous hard work was there. But what was missing was understanding. And that's why jnana, that third aspect, it's the third important thing, not the first. But it is still important. And when these three things come together, each and every faculty of our being is taken care of. And then, at least in the way the path of Gita progresses from karma to bhakti to jnana, and then in the 18th chapter, at the end, Krishna ends with parabhakti, with the highest form of love. So the intermediate one is an attempt. We try to love. We work on our feelings of the heart. But the last one is a natural, universal love for all beings that we see in the lives of all the great saints. When someone like Jesus Christ was dying for humanity, he was inspired by what the Gita would call parabhakti. So every time I say namaste to you in the Indian culture, in the yogic culture, I bring together my hands, karma, press them against my heart, bhakti, bow down my head, jnana, to you, to the consciousness present within you. So jnana needs to be subdued. If it leads to ego, then if it leads to pride, if it leads to arrogance, then it has absolutely undermined the purpose. It needs to lead to universal, unconditional love for all beings. So that would be my understanding.
Can I add something?
So understanding and knowledge are two different things.
Yeah. Can I just add one little thing?
Sure.
In the teaching of Swami Shivananda in Rishikesh, he formulated his yoga as the integral yoga. And that was the integration, or he said it has to be a balanced development of these three human faculties, of the head, heart, and hands. And he said it's like a bird. For a bird to fly, it has to have the two wings and the head. And the karma bhakti and jnana yoga has to be...
Actually, just the observation that he made that knowledge and wisdom are two very different things, that reminds me of a beautiful passage from the Brahma-bindu Upanishad, that after taking out the essence of all the ancient teachings, grasp what is meaningful to you as an individual, and then tyajed grantham asheshataha, put them aside, throw them away. They have become absolutely meaningless. It is like a honey bee goes into a flower, takes out the honey, and after that leaves the flower. So that is what the Upanishads tell us to do with this. They just show us the path. They just the teachers, where they have reached, they show us the path. But as I was saying the other day, that wisdom is not to be found in any book at all. Krishna makes it amply clear towards the end of the fourth chapter that there is nothing as purificatory as wisdom, but it is only found gradually within oneself as a person perfects themselves with the practice of yoga. Nahi jnanena sadrusham pavitramiha vidyate. There is nothing as purificatory as jnana. Nahi jnanena sadrusham pavitramiha vidyate. Tat swayam. We get it on our own. Tat swayam yoga samsiddha. As we perfect ourselves more and more through the practice of yoga, kalena, with time, with patience. Seeds have to be sown, and it takes time from a seed to produce a fruit, so it requires time, but it is atmani vindati. It is found within oneself. He doesn't say you will find it in the Gita or in the Vedas or in the Upanishads or in anyone's teaching.
I think it's important in regard to knowledge to understand what is it that I need. Not just to have knowledge for the sake of knowledge. And there's no use for me. But to know what do I need at this moment in my life in order to evolve, to learn, to be a better person. And so it's not just to stuff our head with a lot of knowledge and information. To let go of that we don't need and just keep what we need.
Can I just add one last sentence that comes to me, which has been quoted also by Vyasa in his commentary on the Yoga-sutras. Swadhyaya yogamasita. Go deeper into your practice of yoga by studying the teachings. And yogat swadhyaya mamanit. And by practicing, understand the deeper meanings of the teachings. So, with the help of the teachings, we go deeper into the practice, and as we go deeper into the practice, we understand the depths of the teaching. And it is with the two eyes. You can also see with one eye, but you don't see the three dimensions. You don't see the depth. It's just a one-dimensional picture. But with two eyes, you see the depth. So these are like the two eyes. Swadhyaya, yoga, sampatya, when we have the both eyes, then with the help of these two. So, like in physics, we have theoretical physics and we have practical physics. Practical physics informs the theories inform the experiments, experimental physics. And so they help each other. And that's how science makes progress. So, I think it's absolutely the same approach in yoga as well. Our practice informs our understanding, then our knowledge informs our practice, and like this we go deep. They are like the two legs, the two wings of the bird.
But I would add a third wing to this, because when we talk about prana, there are also people who are very pranic by themselves. They're just full of vital force and they're full of health, and everybody around, and these people are so energetic and so, they could go out in the cold without getting cold. So I would say, and there are other, we can look at it from the other point of view. You have the practices to cultivate prana, and I think, maybe you correct me, because you know the Upanishads so well, but I think in Kaushitaki Upanishad they say that there are two ways. You can know the prana, and you can be connected to prana, and both lead to immortality. So some people are just connected to this force, they're full of it for some reason, karmic reason, and some have the knowledge how to cultivate it and how to get in contact. Any more questions to each other? Maybe we can move on to the questions from the audience.
Just with regard about what you just said, you can be born with very little prana, and you can live a long life, provided you have understood that effort or conflict, not effort. Conflict is destructive, and you have to follow the path where you feel not only in confidence with life, but also in agreement with yourself at every step. Then, even if you have a small quantity of prana, you don't need to go and try to increase it by some means. You just know how to live your life intelligently. And this is enough, it seems to me.
Beautiful.
Okay, guys, the questions, please.
I would like to ask about different categories of prana. It was already mentioned today, like 3 forces, 5 categories, and if possible, clarify a little bit what are they stand for, and if possible, what are the practices to increase the amount of this prana?
What are
The practices
I don't understand.
Before that, there was what are the stand for? That's what I heard, but they didn't make sense.
What are the difference between these categories? what are the differences between these categories? What are the characteristics of them?
Okay. Yeah.
The difference, didn't hear the difference.
You
between
mean
what?
the difference between the different pranas that we have mentioned? Oh.
So, is that directed to anyone particular, or you want to hear it from everybody?
Just wondering who would like to answer.
Siddhartha, maybe you start already.
Okay, as you say. So, as I mentioned, there are clearly, we find descriptions of 5 pranas active within the body, 5 pranas active in the universe, and 5 pranas active in the mind. So these 3 categories we find. There are some other categories as well. Some of the Upanishads, they, for example, speak of 14 pranas, which are nothing but each one of them is one prana connected to one certain sense modality. So the prana connected to the eye, the prana connected to the ear, so like this, the prana connected to the 5 senses of perception, 5 senses of action, and the 4 internal organs. So like this, ultimately the idea is always that it's one principle, but depending on the work that it is doing, like the same person, when the person is in the kitchen, we refer to them as the cook. Then when he is driving, he becomes a driver. When he is managing an institution, he's a manager, then a director. So these different names are given to the same fundamental principle, depending on the visible work that is being done. Now, there are so many practices in different traditions. The 2 fundamental ideas behind all these practices, when it's the practice of pranayama, which literally means the stretching of prana, to make it subtle and long. The immediate effect that is there is that because the mind is deeply connected to the breath, the moment we prolong the breath, make it subtle and prolonged, and as it calms down, with that our thoughts, our mind absolutely calms down. So there is a deep connection of our emotions, and you can feel it very easily. I mean, when we are frightened, when we are angry, when there is strong passion in us, even if we are sitting, we can feel the breath really very strong. You know, when we are angry, for example, we have a very strong breathing. So emotions actually trigger breathing. And the opposite is that if you calm down the breath, then also those emotions. So emotions are a very strong force, and the only way to be able to manage emotions, and emotions come out, they are reactions, they are unconscious reactions, which if anger is welling up in me, I cannot do it. And in fact, trying to do something about it, to suppress it, leads only to more complications, to more problems. So, but calming down the breath makes it possible to manage, and that's why the 15th century Master Narayana, the commentator on the Yoga Sutra, he speaks of this vasana yoga, the management of vasanas, these deeply imprinted reactions. And pranayama, certainly, that's why, for the sake of inner purification, for example, in the 7 practices that Patanjali mentions, the second one, pratyahara, prolonged exhalation, and vidharana, retention, as a purificatory inner practice. So that would be the fundamental idea behind haṭha-yogic expansion or extension of the breath. And what I am mainly focusing in these 5 days is pranobhasana, or visualization and meditation on breath, not working like haṭha-yogic masters, not doing breath work, but simply observing it and noticing its vastness, its greatness, and how it connects me with the whole universe. That again has a calming, focusing and purifying effect on the mind. So what I practice is leads to this. So that would be the answer from my side.
Do you want to add something? We're good? Yes, Flor?
What is the relation between prana and consciousness? When I think about the third question of the Vedic Upaniṣads, the visiting sage asked Vipalada, where is prana coming from?
Yes.
And he tells him, prana comes from ātman.
Yes.
And prana follows consciousness like the shadow follows man.
Yeah.
So I think, is prana an aspect of consciousness? What do you think?
Yes, that's a beautiful image which Maharshi Pippalada gives there. Chayai tasmin netadatatam. It follows it like chaya, like shadow. And that's why in the beginning I mentioned that when consciousness and energy, when these two entities, they come together, that is when prana is produced. And the deep connection in our body is that it is understood to be the carrier of consciousness. So the more, if as a part of my practice I want to bring my prana into the tip of my hands, then by bringing my awareness, and that's why there are these practices where we travel in the different yogi Yajnavalkya, in the yoga Yajnavalkya gives this beautiful practice of traveling through the body with prana, through the different marmas, to the 12 marmas, to the 12 joints that he speaks about. It's simply traveling with our awareness through different parts of the body, because the idea is that when I sit down and I become absolutely mindful now of my sole of the feet, and my attention is absolutely fixed on the point where the sole of the feet is touching the ground, I've immediately taken the carrier, prana, which more specifically would be vyana, but which is just one name of prana. I have carried it, that. So in our asana practice, for example, by becoming aware of different parts of the body, we invoke the presence of prana in each and every part of the body. So it is seen as the carrier. But to have what's the English word which we used for shadow? To have a shadow, we need light and its absence. And that is precise. So shadow arises with these two, when you have the absence of light. And that's why I said it is the union of consciousness and energy which produces. Whenever they come together, inevitably, there is a beautiful image that colors come into existence where light meets darkness. Those colors would be prana.
Okay. Was that question directed to Siddhartha, or did you?
I think the question is...
Can we say that prana is a dimension of consciousness or not? Is it the same?
They are the same, and they are seen as two. When consciousness in a non-existent form, the prana or shakti lies within consciousness as a potential for creation. Then at the point of creation, the prana moves out of consciousness, but of course it's still, they move together. Now in this creation, which is actually energy, all this creation, the form, Consciousness moves with prana into the form. So when it is not created, without creation, Shakti or energy, prana, is within consciousness. And in the form, consciousness is within the form. But they move together. And then they move out together as well. So in the concept of Tantra, it's the same, but different word. Then Shiva and Shakti, consciousness and energy is within everything. And in the non-existent form, Shakti is the potential within Shiva. And in the creation, Shiva is there as awareness within Shakti. And the very meaning of Tantra is to liberate again energy, the prana from the physical form, absorb it again into, and to again expand the awareness. And then they are always united in a way, but they are seen as separate forces in the creation. But then again, they become one.
I have a question. Like have some critical. Also, my mind is working. Also, yeah. We sometimes people are unconscious, but they're still alive, and they have prana because they're alive. They're breathing. What happens at that moment? There is no consciousness.
First to add something about the question. I think for me, the relationship between prana and chit, consciousness, is the same relationship between the rays of the sun and the sun.
Yes, that's a nice picture. And the ocean and the drops.
So your question, sorry.
Yes.
I wanted
yes, thank you. It was just a question raised aloud. So
consciousness.
If we say I was unconscious, but I was alive because I came back to life, did I have prana at the moment of coma, or did I have prana at the moment of passing out? I'm sorry for such questions.
You don't have prana, prana has you.
Okay, but,
it's not this way, it's the other way around.
It's the other way around, but it goes, it stresses the opinion that was expressed before. Would you answer that?
Okay, so...
I'm asking you because you said that it's...
Okay, so I think the answer to this question is related to his question as well. So, for consciousness, the Upanishads use the expression pranasya pranaha, the prana of prana. And for prana, it's just prana. So there is clearly a slight distinction. And the distinction, as Swamiji said, I would add the metaphor to that. The difference that is there between a wave and the ocean. That is the difference between the prana of prana and prana. That's why again I'm emphasizing it is the union of consciousness with energy when they both come together. Then the wave that arises as a result of that on the surface of the otherwise absolutely calm, waveless ocean, and you need energy for that, then the wave arises. That would be akin to prana, but it cannot be without the water of the ocean, because the wave comes out of it. So they are inseparably united, and yet they are slightly two different things. Now, coming to what you asked. In the yogic literature, we make a distinction between Chaitanya and Chetana. Chaitanya and Chetana. One is a neuter term and one is a feminine term. And the difference is, the best way to understand the difference is that if you take a mirror into the sun, a ray comes out of it. The mirror does not have light, but as the sun reflects in the mirror, and you can actually, I don't know if you've tried this, but if you take a mirror out there and you stand in the sun, it's like a floodlight comes out of it. And that can be directed. You can actually illuminate a dark corner of your home. We used to use a mirror in India when in the summer people sleep under a tree and there is a crow on the top, and crow, it makes such a noise that sometimes the old people, to send it away, use a mirror, and the sun gets reflected, and then they just do a little bit like this. The crow thinks, oh, something is there, and then the crow goes away. So you have one light, the omnipresent light of the sun, which is present all around the mirror, which is everywhere present, which cannot be directed. It cannot be directed in a particular side. But then you have the mirror, the sun reflects in it, and then the light which comes out of it, which is conditioned by the mirror. If you look at the light, the light that comes out of it, if the mirror is triangular, then the light coming out of it will have that shape. If the mirror is round, then it will be round. So it is completely conditioned by the mirror. Now replace the mirror with the intellect, with the mind, the omnipresent consciousness, which is the source of the light coming out from the mind, and then the light which is coming out of the mind. So the state of unconsciousness which you refer to is simply because the mind has stopped working. And the mind came very late, even as we grew up. I mentioned Prana was already present in the moment the sperm and the egg got united. The Prana was already present. That emanating light of Cetana, of limited consciousness, that comes very late. Even in the absence of that, Prana always remains, not only when we are unconscious. In fact, the Upanishads, Prāṇadnaya evaitasmin pure jagrati. In this city, the only fire that keeps on burning is the fire of Prana. All other fires get extinguished. The mind, the intellect, the ego, the memories, all of them get extinguished. But this fire continues to burn from the first moment of conception till the last moment, after which immediately the body starts disintegrating, like when you break the thread, all the beads just get scattered. So, but in between, the prana is always present, and Chaitanya, that omnipresent light, is also always present. What is absent is this tiny little stream of light coming out from the mirror of the mind. That is absent. And the absence or presence of that is what makes us conscious. And so in English, the best way to express the difference between these two forms of consciousness would be consciousness with a big C and consciousness with a small c. That's how the literature distinguishes. And understanding this distinction, it's a little bit subtle, it takes time to grasp, but I think understanding this distinction between these two forms of consciousness that yogic texts speak about resolves a lot of confusion around this.
Okay. So this connection is diverse, let's say. Okay, yes.
Thank you very much for your answers. I have a question concerning ego and prana. Does ego limit, restrict, neglect prana or not? Thank you.
Ego is one of the functions, right? And it comes, one of the functions of the mind is the I am, the identity. And then we need to have that identification. Now when we come to the ego, we often understand the ego as arrogance. But the ego can also be so many different things. And there is one prana which is governing the function also of the ego or I. So, of course, it depends on how we are using our ego. It was mentioned the difference, it can be tamasic or rajasic or sattvic. It can be a destructive force, and it can obstruct you and hinder you in your life. Or you also use the ego as a force to achieve things. We need to have the ego, but we can use the ego to do harm. We can use the ego to do good. The ego can be arrogance. The ego can also be respectful. So it depends on how we are using our ego.
Okay. Anyone else want to reply? There wasn't
the question is, what is ego? Because the meaning is in the word means something, and the way the question was put, I think, means something else. So what do you mean by ego?
Maybe I was wrong, and I used to identify ego like something bad and something to be destroyed, should be destroyed.
The feeling I am in itself is not bad or good. It's just a feeling that I am. The good and the bad does not come from that feeling. It comes from something else, which is perverse or clean understanding, which makes our actions and thoughts perverse or clean. Prana has nothing to do with it. I mean, you put gasoline or electricity in your car to drive, the car will be driven the same way. I mean, but the direction the car takes, the way you drive, does not depend on the gasoline or on the electricity. It depends on some other factor with the driver. So if by ego you mean the driver, what is the driver in the car? It is the intelligence that is at work using the steering wheel. So the problem is not with regard to prana, it is regard with buddhi, with the intelligence. Not intellect for me, intelligence, which is different from intellect. The difference between intelligence and intellect is rational thinking. Intelligence is that which allows you to understand immediately, without thinking. Just seeing. Seeing things as they are, this is understanding. Thinking about things, that is intellect. And this will lead you nowhere.
There is a very beautiful symbology in India about the ego. You know, we all think that, we have to, in the yogic process, we have to get rid of the ego and destroy the ego. But in the Indian symbology, and it's also used in different ceremonies and rituals, right? That is the coconut. You know the coconut? Yeah. And the coconut is very hard outside. So in many ceremonies, the coconut is cracked, right? But when we crack, and the symbology is to crack the ego. And when we crack the coconut, we open it, and inside, what is there? It is white, it is soft, it is sweet. So that is just it is not getting rid of the ego, it's the transformation of the ego.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to reply, or we can go on with the questions?
As you say.
Okay, that was a question? Yes.
Hello, good evening. I don't know how to do this question in any way, but I'm looking more from a householder perspective, right? I remember reading in the book from Yoga-sutras of Autobiography of a Yogi. The thing that marked me was like, he says, the one who doesn't bother to look inside will not find in the mountain.
Sorry?
The one who doesn't bother to look inside will not find it in the mountain.
Yeah.
Okay? Now looking from a Prana perspective, using some things that I learned in Yoga-sutras, for instance. So as a householder, where I have my job, I have my family, I have the population around me to sustain and to exchange. where the prana, so located in the cities, and so the level of prana in theory is not as high as in the mountain. And then I look at myself like, okay, I need to find a way to keep my levels of prana high, but still, if I don't bother looking inside, I will not find in the mountain. So here we find ourselves in the mountain, looking for the prana where it's abundant. But then I go home, and then I'm like in this conflict where, okay, I do the yoga practice, I do the meditation, I try to achieve high levels of prana, but perhaps not enough. And perhaps even my meditation practice is not as high as possible, because generally the environment is not conducive to the meditation. I mean, it's not a question directly, it's just like putting on something that's bothering me about. And if you want to share something with me, I will be ready.
Yes, please.
It's too long. Make it short so that we understand.
We have to do the best, what we can, wherever we are, and use what we have. So even when we are living in the city, where there is not a lot of prana, it's difficult, then we have to take care of what we eat. We still can find in the city parks and use the parks. We can't be up in the mountains, but find the higher level of prana wherever we can. And we can use, in the city it's very useful to use visualization technique as well. So wherever you find that you are in a situation where you feel a lot of, there's not prana and there's a lot of negative energy, a very simple practice to do, you can do it anywhere, on the bus or in the office, wherever. You just visualize yourself in a transparent bubble. And you fill that bubble with light. And the light can shine out, but negative energy cannot come in. But in that simple practice also to just increase the prana. And you can add the repetition of the mantra Om. You don't have to do it loudly. And mantras are very, very useful, a very useful tool. Even if when you are sitting on the bus or the metro, or you can just silently repeat the mantra Om. And repeat mantras in your house will also increase the level of prana in your house. And not only for you, but also for the family and neighbors.
Would you like to comment?
Okay. I'm still stuck with the first question, and I've been bringing something to answer this. So the beautiful thing about prana, which makes it also very different from consciousness, consciousness cannot be observed. It cannot become an object. Like you cannot see your eyes, you cannot observe consciousness. Consciousness is that which observes. On the other hand, prana in the form of breath can become an object of observation, and that's why it is the last object of, it is the primary object of meditation, while Brahman, pure consciousness, never becomes an object. So that's also the difference between consciousness and prana, and that's precisely why it is, for the practice of upasana, for the practice of meditation, it is so practical that it can be done wherever we are. Wherever, even just traveling up the lift when we have nothing to do. Every moment when we are sitting in the bus, in the train, not if you are driving yourself.
Not driving.
Because I remember when my father came to Belgium in the 50s, the person who was driving him around, he sometimes, my father used to laugh about it, that while driving he would start practicing, and then, what are you doing? And he said, I'm practicing pranayama, but do it at home. No, I don't have the time. But then please don't do it while driving. Both of us will be devoid of prana. So not then, but otherwise in every moment when we have nothing else to do, then instead of just allowing the mind to wander here and there, let's give it a focus. Use that moment to calm down the mind. So the person that we are meeting, after a few moments, the interaction will be more beautiful. So this is like a safe space where we learn to drive the car, but you don't end up driving the car in the safe space all your life. It's just a learning track where we don't have to fear about other cars, but once we know what to do, then I think that has to be applied on the busiest streets of Bern, Geneva, and Zurich.
On my behalf, I want to say also a few words to respond to what you were saying, because I also raised this question. I also live in a city, and it's so nice here, and there's so much prana, but we're still going home. And my answer to this is, of course, it's nice to come to Zinal and feel this energy, feel so much prana around. But then it is also, after a week of being in Zinal, it's so nice to go home and meet all the people. And there are many other energies in the city that we also depend on, that really fulfills our life and make our life what it is. So we just have to be in the balance and have the opportunity to go to Zinal, to go to other pranic places, and be also a part of a social life, part of a loving life and intellectual life and all other aspects of life.
I want to add an information. I didn't get your point, but now I understand from what the other said. An information about the fact that in France and in the States, people who are in jail awakened. And to be in jail is worse than to be at home in a city. So watchfulness is open to us everywhere, at any time, whichever the conditions. And maybe the conditions which are so nice here are dangerous in the sense that they give us the idea that we need to be in a beautiful place, which is wrong. It's not a question of the outside, it's a question of the inside. And the inside is the same, whether you are here or elsewhere. What you watch is not the outside. It is what is happening in you. And the more difficult the situation, the more obvious the reactions that people call the ego, wrongly. And you have a better chance to realize when you are in jail and you have nothing else to do and you get bored and maybe more than that, afraid. This is the best condition, not a peaceful place.
So, thank you very much, Francois, all our speakers, for this wonderful communication, this, I wouldn't even say a discussion, but a sharing of opinions, visions. And thank you so much for such wonderful questions. So I think this was a great event, honestly, from my point of view, and it was so nice to hear the opinions and communicate in this format. And we're not leaving tomorrow. We still have the lectures, and we'll see each other. So if you have more questions, you'll be able to ask the teachers either on the way or on the lectures. Yeah, thank you very much for the round table, and thank you very much for the